Welcome back to the shop, my friends. Steve here at SKS Props, and in today's build video, I am still on a Fallout kick, and that's even after putting out a complete set of Fallout Combat Armor templates. In this video, I'm going to be painting an NCR helmet. Now, this is a print file from my friends over at Galactic Armory, and it's going to be a full painting demonstration. But if you're interested in fabricating one of these out of foam, definitely check out my friends Ashen Warrior Props and Much Props. I'll have links to all of these creators down in the description section. So no matter if you're printing it or fabricating it, I can show you how to take a basic print or foam fabrication and make it look like it's right out of the wasteland. Now, this is a very complex, over the top, lots of mediums, lots of different styles and techniques in this build, but I think it turned out absolutely fantastic. Let's go ahead and get started. This model was printed at 100% on my Banbu H2S in gray PLA. With my helmet printed, I can now remove the supports to start the cleanup process. I want the helmet form-fitting versus having a bobblehead, but the design of this neck opening is too small for my head, so I'm going to remove material on either side using a rotary tool. And one thing to note is that I'm not using an aggressive sanding drum, so I can better control how much material is removed. If you notice here, I've sanded up through the material enough that some of the infill is starting to show. And to fill this in and help smooth it out, I'm going to be using some epoxy sculpt. This is a two-part putty compound that when mixed together will eventually be rock hard. But until that point, it's very easy to move it around, and you can even use water to help smooth it out. Now, the file itself is pretty good, but I decided that I want to add some additional accessories to my helmet. So I went through my bins of resin cast parts and found a couple that I liked. This little piece was cut to conform to the angle on the face shield. Another thing that I wanted to add was an antenna to the box at the back. So to bulk out this area to match some game reference images that I'd found, I'm using some 1/2-inch poplar. And to help these pieces better attach to the surface, the backside was also sanded flush. After that, a little bit of super glue was added and these pieces could be pressed into place. As an additional build-out detail, I cut a small strip of 2mm foam. Super glue was added to this piece and it could be wrapped around the dowels. To fill the gap on either side of the dowels, I cut down some matchsticks to size. And this is the kind of stuff that I love, creating details like this from random greeblies throughout the shop. Originally, I was going to use a bamboo skewer for the antenna, but later on in the video, I actually swapped this out for a metal version instead. To get rid of some of the more tiered print lines, I'm going to be using a foot sander. This sander has a really nice hard backing to it, and it does a decent job removing most of the lines. Now later on, I'm going to actually add some texture to this dome, so I don't want it smooth, I want a little bit of grit. Before I add any filler, I do work my way around the helmet using my sanding drum to add some battle damage. There are reasons why parts of the helmet or the face shield would receive more damage. Now, it is freezing here in the Midwest, but I do make a quick trip outside to spray on some filler primer. This was then brought back into the warm shop so that it could cure before I moved on to additional sanding. For the texture on this dome, there's lots of things I could add to it, like stone texture spray or iron filings. But in this case, I'm going to be using some unsanded tile grout. I like this material because the binder that's in it, once dry, is very strong. To prep the dome surface, I'm going to be watering down some PVA glue with some distilled water. This is thoroughly mixed together in a slurry and then brushed onto the surface using a chip brush. After the surface has become tacky, then I'll add some grout to the glue and water mixture. I'll then mix this together and add a little more grout until I have a milk-like consistency. From there, I can then start to tap the grout onto the surface. And it's important that I'm tapping to alleviate any brush strokes. After this wet layer of grout had been applied, I'll then sift some dry grout on top. And then as a final pass, I'll go and tap more wet grout on top. Layering up like this makes sure that I have a decent coating across the entire dome, but I'm also making sure to get that texture that I want. While it's still wet, I do go through and remove any excess grout from the recessed rivets. And like I'd said, it's pretty cold here, so I helped speed up this process with a hairdryer, but once everything had completely cured, you can see these awesome textures throughout this print. The grout mixture had filled in some of my battle damage, so I went back with my sanding drum and re-established some of these marks. From here it's time to prime the entire surface, using one of my favorites, Rust-Oleum Self-Etching Primer. This bites into the surface a little bit for a durable finish. The metallics on the face shield are going to be applied in a couple of different steps, the first being some Rust-Oleum Dark Metallic. I tape off the dome of the helmet to protect it at this point. The rattle can metallic has a decent sheen to it, and I want to make sure to maintain that separation of sheen between the face mask and the dome. After the face shield had cured, I could then tape off that section to address the dome. The rattle can I'm going to be using here is Rust-Oleum Green Camo, and if possible try to keep all your paints the same brand. That way you don't have any cross-contamination or accidents where the paints react with each other. While I let everything on the helmet to dry completely, this is where I decided to change my antenna from wood to metal. Overall, I'm just a lot more confident in a metal antenna not breaking as I travel around. The metallics on the face are completely cured, so my next step is to add some graphite powder using some shop towels. The powder is going to help smooth out the surface as well as give it more of that realistic metallic sheen. And I'd like to take the metallics just a little bit further, so I'm going to use some Duralumin from my friends over at the Digital Armory. This is a fantastic metallic spray that can easily be put through your airbrush, and here I'm using an Iwata Eclipse at around a 20 psi. But here you can see just how reflective that surface becomes. In fact, it becomes so reflective that I need to knock it back just a little bit. So to do that, I'm going to be using some Dirty Down Rust Aging Spray. This is a water-soluble spray that I end up applying to the face shield and the dome. After the spray is dried, I can then go back with water and a damp paper towel to help remove some of the material. And just like the battle damage, I'm thinking about where's the rust most likely to build up on this mask. On the dome, I add splotches of water here and there, and what this does is reactivates it and helps break up the overall look. And this is really starting to come together. Look at those subtle variations in all of the metallics. To simulate the textures of the dome being scraped away to bare metal, I'm going to be using some Pro Acryl Silver. Now this paint is very opaque, so I'm using detail brushes to make sure I don't get it anywhere that I don't want. For more realistic weathering, I'm going to be using various wire brushes and pin files. With these tools, I'm able to attack the surface more, scraping through the various layers that I've applied down to the original PLA. This type of simulation of damage gives it a lot more realistic look than if it was just paint on its own. The dome of the helmet is still a little too clean for my taste, so utilizing some Liquitex Heavy Body, Raw Umber, and Mars Black, I'm going to add a wash. Now the wash itself is concentrated more around the midsection of the helmet, leaving less of this pigment at the brow ridge and at the top of the dome. I also take my wash and apply it to the inset rivets around the dome. Using a little less water, this mixture is also painted into the textured filtered areas around the helmet. Using one of my favorite products, the Dirty Down Rust Concentrate, I can now start to go around the helmet and pick out areas that have a lot of dirt and grime. Just like the spray, this is a water-soluble mixture, so I like to add more than I think I'm going to need, and then I can always go back with a damp brush or paper towel and remove material or feather it out. The Dirty Down Rust is also applied to some of the exposed metal areas on the dome. Now usually when I'm doing a rust or grime buildup, I do one pass all the way around, and then I'll go back and pick out certain areas that I feel are more important or need to have a visual interest or impact. Building up the layers like this helps tell that story of what this prop has gone through. Just like the wash that I applied earlier, I'm going to add some watered down Dirty Down Rust to the dome as well. This simulates as though some of these areas that are developing rust have started to weep over time, and that rust is building up specifically in some of the deeper damage. Now at this point, the helmet is really starting to come together. I think the paint job is looking great, but I think one thing that would take it a little bit further is by adding some LED lights. To give the helmet a little bit of life, I'm going to be adding some 3-volt 5mm LEDs. This particular one is red, and it's going to be inserted into one of the resin cast bits from my bin. This LED will then be wired down into a 2032 coin battery with an on and off switch. The bigger light is a little bit trickier. I'm going to start with a glass drop. To the back of this, I'm going to attach a cabinet door cushion. I like the rings that it created. It gave it an old-timey glass look. This time I'll be using a yellow LED, and I'll be gluing this once again into one of my resin cast pieces. All of the individual pieces could then be glued together into one piece and then adhered inside the helmet. With the LEDs and the resin cast brackets installed, I could then solder together all of the wires. The coin battery I left till last to make sure I had a good placement for it, and with this piece I had some double stick Velcro so I could still pull the coin receiver out and change the battery when needed. With all the wiring complete, I felt now would be a good time to glue in the antenna. As another little addition to this helmet, I'm going to drill out these faux rivets on the sides and add some metal ones. It's a simple process of just popping the nail out of the rivet and then gluing these into place. But again, that extra little glint of metal definitely makes a difference. Being a prop maker / hoarder, I have lots of old useless power cords that I can cut up to add to props. So I thought it'd be really cool to drill out some holes into these areas and insert these cords to make it look as though all of it is functional. So now it looks like the comms and the lights are actually attached to some sort of battery pack. To make this helmet actually comfortable to wear, I'm going to be using two different types of foam. I've got a box of baseball helmet insert pads. These are a little higher density and help stabilize the helmet on your head. And I'm also going to use some 1-inch upholstery foam that I've cut into strips. The foam here is a lot more forgiving, but they end up holding the helmet snug while you walk around. Now the lenses for this helmet are very important because if you're going to be wearing something like this at a convention, you want to make sure to have full visibility. And I know in the game there are certain reference images that have the eyes lit up. And I've done the whole light up eyes things on multiple different costumes in the past, like Dead Space. It's not always a good time. So I figured if I'm going to be wearing this down at DragonCon, the LED lights on the sides are fine. I don't need the eyes to light up as well. Now that's just my personal opinion. If you want to add lights into your eyes, by all means, go ahead and do that. It's time to start creating the lenses for the eyes, and I start by tracing the openings onto some poster board. These get me close, but I add a little more material to match the cutout on the interior. The lenses themselves are going to be made out of some welding face replacement shields, and since the look is supposed to be red, I'm going to add a little bit of transparent vinyl as well. Some soapy water is applied to the surface of the replacement shield, and then I could squeegee the vinyl down. Now I'm not worried about making these perfect and getting rid of all of the air bubbles, because even with these I still want that gritty wasteland look. Using a scribe I could trace around my pattern, and I could cut these out using some heavy duty shears. Once in place, they could be secured using some high temp hot glue. This whole side has to be one of my favorite aspects of this helmet. By taking all those individual little pieces, adding the lights, adding the additional cords and the antenna, just brings it to life. It gives it something a little bit extra that the original print didn't have. For the side of the helmet, I created a basic decal in Photoshop and then cut that out by hand. Then using a small upholstery foam square and some titanium white, I could stipple the paint onto the surface. Stippling works great for this application because I still want it to have that worn look. So after the mask was removed, I could then go back with a damp paper towel and remove even more of that titanium white. And to give it more of that in-game personalized look, I could dry brush some hash marks onto the side of the helmet. A small triangle was also applied to the respirator. Now, in my opinion, doing little things like this are what makes the costume yours. Little unique additions that you can add to your build and really authenticate it to you. So when it comes to customizing the helmet, you don't necessarily have to do what I do. Feel free to be creative and do your own thing. The lenses look good, but they're a little too clean to match the wear and tear of the rest of the helmet. So I'm going to start by applying some Liquitex Raw Sienna around the perimeter. From there I could use a damp brush to help knock it back some. This is going to help give the appearance of a little bit of grime buildup. To take this look a little bit further, I'm going to brush on some water around the edge. This is going to help the Fuller's earth dust stick to the surface. After it had been applied, I could then go back with a damp brush and help tidy it up. After the dust had dried, I could then scrape off bits of it using the end of a Q-tip. The dust looked really good on the eyes, so I also added some to the respirators where there'd be air and moisture buildup. This was definitely a fun project, and it's nice every now and then to take a prop to the limits. By not having a deadline for this build, it allowed me to go in and add all of the details that I wanted. And hopefully you learned a few tips and tricks that you can utilize in future builds. And if you are, be sure to tag me on Twitter and Instagram so I can see your creations.